Hey guys, what's up? It's Lizzie Jane, and we are back with another podcast this week. I am pleasantly joined by HVDES, as well as Mike Giergrich, who is the Director of Communications over at End Overdose. This was such an insightful conversation. For those who may not know, End Overdose is a nonprofit organization based in Los Angeles, California, working to end drug-related overdose deaths through education, medical intervention, and public awareness. End Overdose has active partnerships with Insomniac, Live Nation, AEG Presents, Overdrive, and many more, and has worked hand in hand with artists such as HVDES, our guest today, Anthony Green from Seosin and Circus Survive, and many, many more. HVDES is an absolute icon. She is a vocalist, artist, DJ, engineer, singer, songwriter, and she just released her debut album, How to Kill a God. HVDES has always been a pillar in the community, who has been someone who is very transparent about her own personal story and journey. She has created a very, very safe space for her fans and her followers to come along this journey with her. She really brings awareness in the community to safe substance utilization and prevention. Mike Giergrich is Director of Communications at End Overdose. He is a former music publicist with over 7 years of experience working alongside a list of acclaimed artists. He has seen the effects of the opioid epidemic on both family and friends while in recovery himself. His passion for combating the overdose crisis and public relations led him to End Overdose, where he now spearheads communication to the media and our growing community. If you would like to learn more about End Overdose, click the link in our description, share this podcast, share it with friends and family. This is Lizzie Jane, and you are tuning into my podcast with HVDES and Director of Communications at End Overdose, Mike Giergrich. Hey guys, what's up? It's Lizzie Jane, and you guys are tuning into another episode of the Lizzie Jane podcast. Today we have two super special guests. I have Svdden, also known as HVDES, who is an electronic dance music artist that is very much so known in our space for like blending genres of metal rock influences, having some live singing with like heavy dubstep, mid-tempo, and she's working on a freaking album that she's in the middle of putting out. So that's so exciting. And then I have Mike, who is here. He is the Director of Communications for End Overdose, which is a company that we have been seeing everywhere around the nation in every venue at so many festivals, that is bringing awareness to really just being aware of the things that are going on around you and making sure you're being proactive and not being a bystander when it comes to substances and everything else in between. And I am going to go into this like a Lizzie Jane 101 for dummies. What is End Overdose, and how do we be proactive, and how do we make sure that we're making a difference as artists and fans and everyone else in between? So thank you guys so much for coming on. And if you guys want to just kind of do like a short intro of like really who you are and like some cool stuff that you're working on like for the company, and then also use Svdden for like music and stuff going on in your life, and then we can kind of like hop into this conversation.
You want to go first, Mike?
Yeah, I'll go for it. Hey, I'm Mike. I'm the Director of Communications for End Overdose. Stoked to be here. So thank you, Lizzie, for having us. I was a music publicist for 7 years, representing a lot of EDM DJs, producers across different like EDM subgenres. Joined End Overdose 9 months ago as our Director of Communications. I essentially took all of my experience from the music industry and have applied that to the nonprofit space. And, you know, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. Our goal is to end drug-related overdose deaths through public awareness and education. So, you know, it's a pretty comprehensive way we approach this goal to end overdose, and music is a big part of it. So, and, you know, we've done a ton with Sav. Sav is the best. So yeah, thanks again for having us.
Of course. Svdden?
I'm so bad at introductions. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so what do you want me? You want me to just like give a little?
Yeah, like how did you, like, you are HVDES, and like you've gone through like this whole like personal journey that has come to you being also like a huge advocate for awareness, and you work with like End Overdose at like every major festival that you play. I feel like you do like a pop-up. Like give a little bit of background there.
Yeah, so I am in recovery. I've been sober now for about almost 4.5 years. And I just it's something that I feel like really passionate about, just because it's not only affected like my own life in like, a super profound way, and I feel like very lucky to like still be here, just because I feel like there's so many times that I rolled the dice and I was just so like deep in the rabbit hole of like drug addiction and stuff that and then, obviously too, just with the like explosion of fentanyl in like the US, it's just like really affected not only my life, but like also a lot of people that I care about. And I feel like it's just really important to bring that like educational aspect to it, because I think that you're never going to be able to separate like entertainment from like party culture. And I think that a lot of people have this like idea that, it would never happen to them, or like, all these things. But the truth of it is that like, it's kind of they're kind of one in the same, like party culture, music culture, entertainment. Like people are partying, they're doing drugs and whatever, and it shouldn't be this like, thing that is like a life, or I mean, obviously you're always taking a risk if you're partying, but like it shouldn't be this like I'm scared I'm gonna die type thing if you're just like, having fun and doing whatever you do like recreationally. And I just think that, yeah, it's just something that I care about a lot, just because of my own personal experience. And I feel like, if I can use my platform for, something that helps keep people alive, especially people in like our community, and just helps like kind of destigmatize, all of this stuff, then I want to do whatever I can to, do that.
We love that. I mean, I think as artists, we often underestimate the power and influence we have, especially in like this age of social media, and you having like your own personal journey. I've just always looked at dance music, especially knowing a lot of people that have. The pandemic was really hard. I think the pandemic was like the first time that I saw a lot of people that were within like my like close circle, quote unquote, go through some stuff that was really eye-opening for me. And a lot of like event companies and artists, I think, often like turn their head and they just like don't really want to talk about it or pretend that it's happening. But like electronic dance music and substances in general go hand in hand. I mean, to like,
Yeah.
to say that these things don't happen at every major festival or at your, big club every Friday night is just not the truth or like reality of the matter of fact. But I also know that it's taken like a grave effort from people like yourself, Savannah, and then also from your end, Mike, like getting in these doors and like having event companies be comfortable with saying, we know this is going on here. We're going to bring awareness to it. We're not going to turn a blind eye. And then also, Savannah, like you actually like sharing your story and speaking up on things, and it being like this very, not like transparent thing, but like you have struggled with a lot of things that a lot of your fans have struggled with. And it's like this connection factor where you're just trying to be preventative and like bring that awareness to people. So like, Mike, like how's the journey been? I know you've only been with End Overdose for so long, but I know you know a lot of their background and a lot of their history. Like, how has it been like getting indoors with these venues? Because I've talked to nonprofits before. I've done stuff with Dance Safe. I've done stuff with other nonprofits where like a lot of these event companies really won't acknowledge that there is drug use going on at their festivals.
Like just on that tip really quick, I remember like obviously I've been acquainted with End Overdose for a couple years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like talking to Theo like a couple years ago about how much I wanted this to be like a part, like a more like in like more second nature integrated piece of just like, oh, this is just part of like the festival experience, like having access to these resources and this education. And like I like tried to raise it to, a couple kind of like suits in the industry in a couple different places, and it just like got met with a lot of pushback because there's so much like red tape, and I think a lot of people are really afraid to like acknowledge this stuff because it's tricky and it's very taboo, and it's like acknowledging it to like in a legal sense for a lot like for I don't know the exact like intricacies of how this like legality stuff works, but I know that like semantics and things like that are important because the red tape can just like make it difficult because the companies obviously don't want to be like they're not promoting partying and drug use. And so I think it's a tricky balance to be found, because obviously on our end it's like, yeah, we know you're not promoting that, but like on the legal side of things, it just gets like really complicated. So, like, I think, just seeing all of the stuff too that like Lauren has done, Lauren Brittany from, or Lauren Wagner, I think is her last name, but, she works, at Insomniac, and she's been like so instrumental at just like figuring out ways to like find that balance. And I admire her so much for that, because I feel like in the beginning as an artist, like that's where I kind of felt like I lost power a little bit, because I'm not like, behind the scenes working all the logistics for these events and festivals and stuff. So it's like, yeah, I can use my platform, but it's just cool to see people on the back end, and it just seems like people everywhere, like on every side of the music industry, just like pushing to have these resources be available by just having an open and honest conversation about it, because two things can be true at once, like you can acknowledge the problem while also being like, we're not promoting this kind of stuff. But
yeah, no, absolutely. And then I'm like, Mike, feel free to speak on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think backing up a bit, like, when we first did the community meeting in 2018 after Lil Peep's passing, Emo Night invited us out, and it was like Emo Night, Krayshawn. And it was kind of this convergence and open conversation about, okay, we're losing people in music. What do we do about this? And I think that was the first time that End Overdose realized that, okay, we can be doing something in this community. Mm-hmm. And, fast forward a few years, even though I've been here officially for 9 months, I've known Theo. As long as I've been in LA, Theo's the founder of End Overdose. And I've been helping on and off for quite a long time. And at the beginning of 2022, we threw a concert called Nobody Else Has to Die with the Restless Nights. And we went into it trying to figure out, like, very basically, what do we do and how do we do this? We weren't sure if we needed to, like, have our training on stage, if we needed to be projecting End Overdose graphics. How do we speak to people? And in a way that's not invasive, it's in a way that is speaking their language. How do we meet them where they're at? And what we came to was, it's going to be a concert, and we're going to have a booth to the side where the merch would be, and we'll see what happens. And that was an amazing experience because, as that being the early days of the nonprofit, figuring it out as we were going, the amount of people who came up who told us, they were there just to see Johnny from Health and Sextile. And, they're coming up to our table interested because they've never seen this before. And I think that was kind of a light bulb moment of, okay, we have something here. And later that year, Pascal from Insomniac reached out to Theo, and they, had a conversation about how do we like truly make a difference. And that was the start of our partnership with Insomniac. And, that was definitely and continues to be, I would say, one of our most valuable and most like cherished partnerships, because we came in at an early time of End Overdose relatively. And again, at Insomniac festivals, it was like, okay, how do we, tell these ravers that we're not like trying to come in and preach to them and tell them. And so it's been this like progression over the past couple of years where it went from, we felt kind of like outsiders trying to get our footing and talking to ravers. Now, when they come into a festival, their first stop is End Overdose. And that's kind of since culminated. We just had EDC. We trained 20,000 people at EDC, which is an absolutely insane number. And that wouldn't happen without a legitimate cultural shift that's happened. When we first started a few years ago, I mean, fentanyl and the opioid epidemic has been going on for decades. Fentanyl, in terms of being in the national conversation on like a timeline, is a relatively new to the general public. A lot of people still don't understand it. Some people get like fentanyl confused with Narcan. They don't know which is which. And so it's new ground. But the EDM community has been so receptive to us. And I think it's also just an amazing place to reach people, with Plur being such a big part of the community. And I think that keeping people safe is a part of that ethos. And I feel like that's kind of how we've been able to, become not just speaking at the community, but part of the community. So that's how I see it from kind of like a long view in terms of how we kind of integrated.
I have like chills because it's just fucking crazy, because I've heard the other side of it for so long of like, how do you push through? How do you make sure people are aware without being like in this like attack mode of saying like, we know that there's drug use here and we know that there's substance utilization and and instead, or being like the dare people that are like, I'm going to give you a t-shirt and we're going to hold hands and everybody's going to be
just say no
princesses and we're going to just say no. Yeah. And it just doesn't, health class circa 7th grade, like totally opposite ended, really realistic take. And I feel like a lot of it too is like, you've just developed this pipeline with like getting, whether it's Live Nation, AEG, Insomniac events and more like on board, and then communicating through people like Savannah, who are an artist, who are a performer, who will bring awareness in addition to your own channels to do like meet and greets there, or to do a signing, or to do, her like their own kind of training seminar. What does it like look like your partnership, like with Savannah? Like walk me through kind of like how this developed. Obviously, I know, Sav, you've been involved for a number of years now, but every time I see you play an Insomniac festival, now you do something with End Overdose. And I feel like your fans know you're going to be there. Like End Overdose has gotten like a community that has also like now supported your project. Like how does that back and forth kind of go? And what have you kind of seen from that has helped like build your own community as an artist, actually speaking up on this topic and bringing awareness?
Well, I think like I feel, because like my music is very like vulnerable and like emotional. So I feel like inadvertently it just kind of by default, like speaks to people that have experienced, similar things that I have, or it resonates with them on that level. Because for me, like music has always been, sorry, my chair is really loud, but for me, like music has always been almost like a survival mechanism, not just making music, but just like listening to music and being a fan of music. It's always been something that's been very powerful for me. And so I think like, being able to like just kind of recognizing that this is just kind of, I'm going to attract people that are very much like me, that have experienced similar things to me, or at the very least know people that have experienced similar things to me. And so I just think that like knowing that it's like I can, find ways to use my platform for, I guess, letting those people, because okay, so let me just backpedal a little bit. So like it's really easy, I feel like, as an individual, especially if you like don't have a platform or something, to feel very powerless over this issue, because it's very, very, very complicated, and it goes all the way up, from the individual level all the way up to like, how our healthcare system is structured. So like the opioid epidemic in general. And it's really difficult to feel like there's anything you can really do. I think a lot of people like now, just a lot of young people tend to feel like very powerless when it comes to like making changes on a big scale, or like doing something about these nationwide issues that affect like millions and millions and millions of people. But like, I think it's really important for, people like me and like just other artists of all sizes to like use their platform to kind of empower the like people that feel powerless to this kind of an issue. Because like even on the most micro level, like they're still a part of that change. And even though they might not be like a political like legislator, or like somebody that is like calling the shots in Washington or whatever, there's like little things that everybody can do, and just like, being aware and getting educated and getting excited about it too, and being like, oh yeah, this is cool, like this is a cool thing to do, like, you know what I mean? And I think that the way that End Overdose has kind of integrated into not just the EDM scene, but just the music world as a whole, have done a really good job of that, where it's like, I notice a lot of people that have not been directly affected by like, overdose related deaths in and around their family, their friends, whatever. It feels it's like a dark thing to talk about, because it is dark and it's scary, and but like, it's also the reality. And I think that like making it less taboo to talk about is so much more valuable than people think, and making it something where it's like, oh yeah, this is like, like Mike was saying, this is like the first stop when we go to the festival, because like this, I'm showing my friends and I'm showing the people that in my community that I care about them, you know what I mean? And I care about keeping this community safe. And I think that like, I just try to use my platform in any way I can to just like help that happen. So like, we'll do meet and greets, or, we've done like a little merch giveaway type thing. And then people like, get certified, and just makes it easy too, because even if they're not like entering into a giveaway, or even if they don't like get certified in that moment, like coming to the booth and just being exposed to like the information and the resources, and knowing it's there is like, way more valuable than I think a lot of people realize. So yeah.
Totally agree with that, where it's like what you were speaking on, the whole out of sight, out of mind thing, where it's like if there's not people in your direct circle, like if you think of like your average raver, or maybe like somebody in a bit of like a higher like wealth gap, and like like I'm thinking about like 18 to 21-year-old kids that are like going into college, doing all of this stuff, like they're maybe getting exposed to things for the first time, they're freshmen, they're sophomores, and they like know it exists, but they're also, that's like not what I want to be associated with, or that's not what I want to da 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 da, and they put this kind of stigma in their head where it's, I don't even want to be aware of this going on, because then it acknowledges the fact that I am aware that drug use is an actual thing. I think that's like a huge hindrance that I personally saw in my group of friends, alongside not being involved in electronic dance music. And when I started to like meet people from other walks of life, being in bands and being a producer and being a DJ and traveling on the road, that's when my head switched. And it was just like, you're super, super naive in this subject, but being at least a little bit educated to see people like yourself or people like Grizz, or know people are putting Narcans on their riders or certain types of training at certain venues. I feel like that's all that it takes, but it's like that uncomfortable feeling inside that you don't want to like step over that line to actually be aware.
Yeah, it is. I think it is an uncomfortable subject to broach with a lot of people. Because of the kind of societal taboo. Mm-hmm. But it's just like when you start to think about, all the artists and people that have like, died from overdose related deaths. I think like, even just learning how to spot what it looks like, because, I think a lot of people have this very Hollywood idea of what a drug overdose looks like, where it's like, these crazy like seizing convulsions. And it's like, oh, this person is overdosing, which it can be, you know what I mean? Like that can happen. But like, especially with like opioid overdoses and fentanyl overdoses, like the way that it affects the body, it can be a lot more subtle. And like, for example, when Peep died in 2017, it was like, I think that a lot of people that were on the bus were really shocked because they didn't know what that kind of an overdose looked like. And realistically, if people had been aware of what it looked like and what was happening, and that he wasn't just like, slumped because he was fucked up, it's like, there might have been something might have been able to be done. And I think that like, that kind of knowledge is just really important. And also recognizing that like, fentanyl and opioid overdose, like, especially because of like, the overprescription of opioid pain medications and things like that, like, it affects everyone. It does not matter if you are like a billionaire, if you, are a white collar, like, rich corporate Wall Street guy, or you are like, a user that lives on the street that is like, using fentanyl like purposely and stuff like that. It affects everyone in between. And I think that like, it's just not the type of thing that, I just think that that's an important part of like destigmatizing it, is like normalizing. I don't like to say normalizing it, but like like having people understand that it's not just like, oh, like, it's not just like junkies on the street that like we can easily dehumanize in our brain. It's like your friends and your parents and your uncles and your aunts and yourself and like all and your friends, and like it's everyone in between. And when you humanize it and you like make people relate to it on a personal level, it can be way easier to like help them, I guess, let go of their prejudices against like, Narcan and just overdose prevention education and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
And I just wanted to kind of add on to what Sav is saying, but like recognizing the signs and symptoms is so important. That's why in an overdose, we're so focused not just on distributing the resources, but also educating people on what an overdose looks like and how to respond to it. Mm-hmm. Because, like you can hand out Narcan and that's amazing. But if you're not telling people, to look for the pinpoint pupils, to look for unconsciousness and shallow breathing, like Sav said, to someone that might just look like your friend is passed out. When in reality, if you go through all of your checks, okay, they potentially might be overdosing. I need to respond. And in terms of the normalization, I think it has to get to a point where naloxone goes in a CPR kit and a first aid kit, just like a Band-Aid. Because it happens anywhere, it happens everywhere. And I think that's because, you have people, like illicitly, or not illicitly using, but like are using illicit substances. You have people who are just prescribed opioids, who are at risk of overdosing. You have this very wide spectrum of different types of using, from what we call opioid naive to opioid tolerant. And there is no like stereotypical that this person is who would overdose on opioids. We're at a place where it can be anyone. It could be someone who is in active addiction. It could be a college kid trying drugs for the very first time. And in terms of, you were talking a bit earlier, about the stigma with maybe college kids who feel like, hey, that's not part of my culture, like my scene, that's not what I'm doing. I think that's why our college chapters have been so impactful, because it now is very normal at 30 different campuses in the US to be walking through your campus like gathering place. It's like, oh, there's an overdose with naloxone and test strips. And it all just comes down to it being like any other thing that they're getting handed out, except these resources are life-saving. So I do think, it can sound kind of hopeless and scary, and overwhelming. But I think the very cool thing is that there are like very real resources and education that can happen right now. And we can do. So I just wanted to add on to Sav's thoughts there.
No, that's perfect. And as we were talking before, it's cool that now I feel like even my generation that went through college is different than the generation that's going through college now. And then I compare like the way that I look at all of the topics that we're discussing compared to the way that like my mother may look at the topics that we're discussing, like the generational gaps. Like I wholeheartedly feel like we're moving in the right direction, where it just starts with the conversation. It starts with bringing the awareness, because I think so much of that stigma is what brings that shock when you have a community of individuals that's not educated, that doesn't want to, realistically look at the things that are going on. Like what you said, Sav, like it doesn't matter. Like it could be a billionaire white collar worker, or it could be like the person on the corner that needs help that's not getting it. When you lose someone in a community to something like this that we saw in COVID over and over and over and over again, where people aren't acknowledging the real reality of substance usage and maybe not testing things the right way, or not going about things in the most safe, natural way, then you get this like huge, abrasive, holy shit, what the fuck just happened, instead of like having that proactiveness. And it's cool to see that now you're actually about to close your chapter applications, which is crazy, right? For End Overdose, like you guys have so many chapters everywhere that like you're closing applications.
So yeah, we have 30 chapters right now, and we're closing in, I think, somewhere close to 100 applications. And if we could approve every application, we would be in all 50 states. It's just a matter of we do a lot for a very small team, with our amazing volunteers all over the place. And yeah, like ideally this chapter program is in every city on every college campus. It's like, how do we keep up with the amount of naloxone and test strips that our chapters need? And that all just comes through donations. So but yeah, our chapter program has been a huge success. And we have chapter members that are either going on, so like Tyler from our UC Berkeley chapter is going on to law school. And then you have Maddie, the co-founder of our UCLA chapter, and she's about to become a full-time End Overdose employee. You have people either coming into our fold or going on to do really cool things. And again, it's like wherever these chapter members are going after college, they're bringing this knowledge and resource with them. And it's just all about that community spread. So yeah, the chapter program is a really amazing thing. And I'm super grateful for all our chapter members.
Yeah. And I think, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Go for it.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to what Mike said with like, when it really comes down to it, like change is created by clarity and subsequent action. So it's like you cannot change anything with just the clarity, with just the awareness. But when you build the awareness and you take action following that awareness, even if it's just 3 test strips in your purse, you know what I mean? Like that is taking action. And when everybody does that collectively, or, you know, not everybody in the whole United States, that'd be nice, but like, you know, but everybody that is willing to, and that we can get to, you know, do something even on the most minute scale, is that is like one small step towards like a massive change, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think this is a problem that's just like so deeply, deeply complicated and deeply embedded in just like our country, and just there's so many layers to it. It's impossible to have this one size fits all solution, you know? And I think the best, you know, way to start is just to like do something, you know, even if it's just like spreading the word or like taking an action, you know, because like yeah, that's really, I mean, that's what change is. It's the clarity followed by the action. And like without the action, it doesn't do anything, you know?
No.
Yeah, we had someone DM'd us on Instagram a couple weeks ago who had just taken our online training, and she was like in a restaurant and someone came in yelling, I think someone's overdosing. And she had taken our training, had her Narcan on her, and like ran outside and revived this guy. And it's like that literally through probably just her seeing a social media share about us led to her taking our training and then reviving someone. So I love what Sav is saying, that like it's not a one size fits all thing. For some people, it's sharing a social media post about us and then forgetting about it. For other people, it's taking the training, carrying their naloxone wherever they go. For other people, it's giving test strips to their friends, even though they might not use personally. I think there's so many different ways you can get involved and, you know, be of service to our communities. So.
Yeah. And I think that's like going back to the beginning of our conversation, Sav, where you're just like, there's so much going on and it's so easy to feel like kind of hopeless, or like me just doing one thing isn't going to like change the world. But it's kind of like, just do the one thing and you've kind of done your part, and like figure out what that means to you.
I think too, like just the political climate overall in our country right now, it's very easy for like people that are our age and, you know, kind of just like the little guy that's not involved in politics in any way, shape, or form. I think it's pretty common to, you know, have friends that are like, don't even want to vote, or like, don't even want to engage in anything as far as like legislation or whatever goes, because it's just like people feel so like, okay, well, what's the point, you know, because
what is it going to
changes, you know, but like, I think that, you know, just empowering the like things that we can do on like an individual level and not focusing on like all the things that we can't do, I think is so important. And I think also just like goes back into that destigmatization. But like, you know, I've had friends that died because of like, they were doing coke that had like fentanyl in it, and they were like your average person that goes out to a club on the weekends and does a bump of coke every now and then, and is like, you know, works 40 hours a week, like just like a normal person by like society's standards. But like, you know, and I've lost friends that way, and it's a very real thing. And I think it's just important to be aware of, because there's no longer this like massive buffer between like, you know, the amount of chances that you get, and you know, it's lethal. It really is. And all it takes is like, you know, just one time where you're like either by yourself or you're with people that don't know what an overdose looks like, or you know what I mean? And that's all it takes. And I think that like people don't necessarily understand like that it's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. It doesn't discriminate. And like, you know, so it just is it's so important. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't have to happen to somebody that you love. And then like, you know, retroactively, you're like, oh, fuck, like now I have to, like, now I care about this. You know what I mean? Like, because there's so many situations where it doesn't have to happen to the person that you care about. And, you know, you can kind of set off a little chain butterfly effect type reaction, you know?
You know, I get super concerned because, Mike, like what you were saying earlier, the electronic community, whether it's from the artist standpoint or the industry professional standpoint or from the fan and consumer standpoint, the plur meets like our awareness to where I feel like this conversation is happening on a very open level now is really comforting. I get scared of like the kids I went to high school with. I get scared of like the people who are full on corporate hats on and they go out every Friday and they do cocaine out of a bag they just got and they just don't even fucking think about it. And like that's the scary part because they don't want to like look inward and say like, oh, like this isn't going to happen to me because I know like I know this guy and I've known this guy for years. And it's like we don't live in that climate anymore, but they haven't like lost someone that's on their like fucking front doorstep to like slap them in the face and say like this could happen to anyone. So like how do you like, but then you mention things like let me get you test strips or like let me send you something to read or let me, and they don't want to hear it. So it's like how do you break through to those people?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is like, or not interesting, more unfortunate is, you know, talking about like maybe these white collar people who go and do cocaine after work on a Friday. Um, it's at a point where they're being affected by it just as much as the musician is affected by it, as much as someone with substance use disorder is affected by it. We did a survey, and I want to say over 60% of people who took it knew at least one person who had overdosed and passed away. Yeah. And it's everywhere. And, you know, kind of like Sav was talking about the political climate, it's one of the very few and rare things that is completely nonpartisan. You have both sides of it from the left and right that are like, we need to do something about this. And that's because both sides are losing people, I think. And it's unfortunate that that's what has to kind of make this a nonpartisan issue. But, you know, speaking and just being a part of the community, you know, you have Republican congressmen, you know, talking about this as much as you have the Democrat, as much as the independent. And I think that also, again, I tried to have some like shining a light and some positivity about it. If we can like bring people together and unite them behind this, which I think we're slowly but surely doing, then there's a chance to like, you know, stop it. So
yeah, absolutely. I definitely think it's I see it just like from my personal journey and perspective, being like very aware within our community now. And for the people who like aren't in our community or, you know, are just kind of like going about their daily lives, I unfortunately like agree with you. Like it is getting to a point where everybody kind of knows someone, even if they don't really want to see it or acknowledge it. Like it is there in the community. I hope like from my personal relationships and people that I know that have, you know, that are in Florida that still go out every Friday and they don't really think 2 cents about it. It's like, you just kind of have to keep bringing it up and like bringing awareness. Like my marketing brain in me goes like, it really takes somebody 7 times to see something to actually think about it. So it's like actually being proactive and sharing, like no matter who you are, where you are. And I guess like just not really being like that self-conscientious of like, oh, like somebody's going to think otherwise of me if I'm sharing this or somebody's going to think da da da. Because I know I have a lot of friends who are like, well, I just don't want to take that step, but then once they take that step, it's kind of like, it's not that bad. And now you actually went online and you got certified and you saved somebody at a restaurant. Like, that's crazy. So if I wanted to be educated in a facet where I felt confident that I was in a situation where somebody needed help, like, what can I do as an individual to take those steps to understand and be knowledgeable and have the right tools?
Yeah, so at our website and overdose.net, we have a 20-minute overdose response training. It shows you some of the history behind the opioid epidemic, how to spot an overdose, how to respond to an overdose, and then how to properly care for someone after you've applied naloxone. A big thing is that naloxone wears off after you've hit someone with it. So it's always important to get medical professionals there who can then be under their care, because they can slip back into an overdose. But all of those things you can learn at our website. And once you've taken the training, we send you free naloxone and test strips. For those who don't know, by the way, naloxone is the generic for Narcan, Revive, Cloxato. It's just the opioid antagonist that's in, the little plungers you see. And if you're at a show, we are at most major festivals in the country. We have what we call rapid training. It's a quick 3-minute. Here's what it looks like. Here's how to hit the plunger. And here is free Narcan. So we try and make it as accessible as possible, both for in person and online. And it's either a 3-minute commitment at a festival, a 20-minute commitment online. And like you said, some people it takes those 7 times to see it, then do it. I've seen comments about oh, the Narcan people at Insomniac events. They don't we we have a
Oh my
a big
God.
public awareness at those events, but there's still a ton of people who go to events who just notice this, that you will hand out medication. So it's just a constant. That's why we're anywhere and everywhere we can be. And we're there when people are willing and ready to come and learn how to save a life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I thank you for clarifying what naloxone was, because I think a lot of people who are not educated yet kind of go, what's that? And then it's kind of again, out of sight, out of mind. So it's that's the generalized term. And now naloxone is actually going to be in all Live Nation venues, right? That recently happened. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So we recently partnered with Live Nation and stocked
Huge.
all. Yeah. Every single venue across the U.S. now has naloxone. And the green room behind the bar, staff members are being trained by End Overdose. We created their online training, so now staff members of Live Nation will see our training, how to respond to an overdose, and you'll have staff carrying it. So it's just another added layer of safety because obviously, you have security, you have festival fans who have been equipped with naloxone, but now getting to a place where every level of attendee at a show, from the fan to the bartender to the artist playing, everyone having naloxone now it's a really big deal.
Huge deal.
And yeah, Live Nation owns so many important venues around the US that have hundreds of thousands, if not, millions of people circulating through them a year. And again, that's now a ton of people who are now a lot safer because naloxone is there.
Yeah, that's honestly fucking incredible. That's such a huge feat. And I feel again, every little action has played its part to kind of finally amount in this acknowledgement and this course of action after understanding the awareness level. And then Savannah, on your side, from an artist perspective and from someone where you shared a bit of your personal journey with us at the beginning of the conversation. I think every artist kind of has their vice, and I'm currently reading that new Rick Rubin book. So I just read this whole chapter about really just vices in general, from someone that from your definition of being in it and you have pulled yourself out of it, speaking on an artist standpoint, how has it like changed your life? Because I know a lot of artists go through this shit. Like we both know so many artists.
Yeah, I mean, so just like a little bit of lore, a little bit of HVDES lore. So like I'm like an addict in the like like disease definition of an addict. Like, you know, I've been like this for my entire life, even when I was a kid. You know, if I had no off button. So like even when you know, I'm playing video games or I'm reading, it's like I did everything to the max. And like when that like addict brain kicks in, it takes over at the cost of anything. So it's like, you know, not wanting to like go brush my teeth when I'm like, you know, 12 years old because I want to play Zelda for 12 hours, and you know, like things like that. There's just no balance in that sense for me. So I think and I feel like I've always you know, really struggled in a lot of ways, like socially, and with like my own like mental kind of stuff. So when I started, like when I got into drugs and stuff, it was like in a lot of ways just this bridge to other people that I felt like was, you know, so I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like people talk to me and people want to hang out with me and party with me and like all this stuff. So like, you know, obviously there was a big part of it too that was like my own desire to like escape or like get out of my head or whatever. But I think there a big piece of it was like, you know, just wanting to like fit in and be a part of something. Because I don't think I really had a lot of that when I was younger too. I was bullied a lot. I didn't really have a lot of friends. And so it was like this kind of like aha moment, you know what I mean? Of like, oh my God, like now I have like people like want to be around me and all this stuff. And yeah, but again, it came at the cost of like everything in my life, like my health, my financial situation, my friendships, my relationship with my family. And it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I went to treatment a couple times. The last time I went was in January of 2020. And that was the only time it really stuck. Because I was just so desperate that I was like, I don't care what I need to do. I was like, I'll do anything. But yeah, so it's just and addiction, I think like runs a lot in my family too, like from when I was pretty young, like not really my immediate family, but like a lot of my extended family, you know, like have been opiate users and, you know, just have like seen a lot of people struggle with addiction. And I think that like there's this piece of the addict brain that I don't think a lot of people talk about, that is this like sort of like very self-obsessed complex, where it's like, you know, when we're like stuck in our addiction, or at least I'll speak for myself, but like when I am stuck in my addiction, I'm very like egocentric and I'm a victim. The world is against me. Like, you know, life is so hard. Why is it like this? And it's just me. Everything revolves around me. But like, you know, that's why I think you see a lot of people in art and music that are very successful, that are also, you know, people that have struggled with mental health and addiction stuff, because it does take a certain level of kind of self-obsessed delusion to be able to like think that you can make it or like get somewhere with music, because you will spend a lot of time not getting anywhere. And it takes like, you know, a lot of times that brain, that like addict brain and that disease, when it's channeled in a healthy way and a productive way, can be like your biggest strength and your biggest asset. And yeah, so I think that's a big like, I think there's a lot of overlap there. And just like for me, I know like I've had a lot of really close calls. Yeah, so I just, it's just something that really, matters a lot to me, because I mean, obviously, like, yes, I'm passionate about music and all of the, fancy shows and the cool visuals and the big, like fancy production, whatever is like cool. And I'm super grateful for it. But like, I feel there's this part of it that's very personal to me when it comes to like advocating for end overdose, and not just end overdose, but like overdose prevention in general. Because that part has affected me, like Savannah, in my own life, and the foundation, the human that's underneath the HVDES project. So it's like, that's something that matters a lot to me. And like, people coming up to me and talking to me about like just how stoked they are to be like a part of the solution, or like telling me about like how they, like, I have people that DM me all the time that are just like, oh, I just got certified. And I'm like, fuck yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's awesome. Like, that people are excited about it. Like, my mom will come to my shows and she'll be like, look what I got. And it's like a Narcan in the bag. And it's like so adorable. And I think just like making it something that's positive, rather than focusing on this bleak, fucked up problem that is permeating every facet of our country, and focusing more on like, okay, now that this is a reality, like, let's get excited about the ways we can change it, and that like the ways that we can make a difference. And so I just, that's kind of just my personal like relation to it, and like why it means a lot to me. But yeah, I think the rave community as a whole, like, I come from like the punk and like hardcore and like emo kind of world. So when I came into the rave scene, it was like so cool because people were so nice.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so awesome. I was like, wow, like people are just like excited. Cause like, okay, so it like, I love the alternative music scene, but like, especially how it was like, like 10, 15 years ago, at least in my experience with it in LA and stuff, there's a lot of like elitist mentality in it. So it's like, if it was like your first show or your first hardcore band and you're like at the function with like a mainstream band t-shirt, people are like, ugh, look at this noob. But like when you get into the rave scene, like people are stoked. They're like, welcome. And you're like, what? You know what I mean? So like I was really caught off guard by that. And I just thought it was a really cool thing. So when I came into the rave scene, it was just so welcoming to me, and like a big part of me just felt so like accepted, like in terms of the community, like not on the industry side, but just like coming in as like a raver and like enjoying the shows and having fun. So, I think like Mike was saying earlier, like what's literally, I can't think of anything that's more plur than like carrying naloxone and like being excited about keeping your friends and your community safe. Like, I literally cannot think of anything that is more plur than that. You know what I mean?
I agree. Well, thanks for like sharing some insight and your story. And what do you think that artists could do better if they wanted to be involved and help bring awareness and like toe like a fine line of like just being conscientious about their fans and like making sure that they're caring about their fans? Because at the end of the day, we don't have anything if we don't have our fans.
I think personally, I'm of this school of thought of like, if you don't know anything, like you don't have to speak on it. And you can do something without being like this just noise that contributes to like all of this swirling hot takes on social media and like, you know, creating these weird, like having these weird like opinions and judgments of like people that might do drugs or not do drugs. And I think there's a lot of artists too that sort of act like they're above the fan culture. And that always trips me out because I'm just like, I'm a music fan at the end of the day. So it's like, I will never, or at least I would like to think that I will never forget that, you know? And so I think like, I think like a lot of artists create this separation almost in their heads between like the fan and them. And obviously it's important to have boundaries with people and to, you know, create space for yourself as an individual and take care of your, you know, your mind and your energy and things like that. But at the same time, like there's no difference between the people that are going to these shows and us, because at one point we were the people going to these shows and we're still the people going to these shows. Like I didn't stop going to concerts when I became a DJ. I wasn't like, yeah, so I can't do this anymore. I'm an artist now. So I think like, I think in general, just everyone could be a bit more compassionate. And that sounds so like, peace and love, you know, but like, it's the truth. I think compassion is not, I think compassion is very disarming. And it's so common on social media now to just see people throwing daggers at each other and making judgments about each other and each other's lifestyles based off of what they do or what they don't do. And everyone's just projecting their own fear and insecurity and anger onto other people and it's like this massive web of like lack of communication and pride and ego. And it's just like a toxic mess. It's so toxic. And so it's like, I think the best thing to do is just to like be compassionate, even if you're like disagreeing with somebody, and just to like be like, okay, like I understand why you might think that. But like here, this is kind of where I'm coming from. And that's disarming, because the minute you go like, you don't know what you're talking about, shut the fuck up, you're an idiot. That's when somebody shuts off and they're like, I don't want to hear it. I don't care about what you have to say. You're an asshole. And like, how does that help anything? And I think like one of the things that I always try to think about when I am having these conversations with people, whether it be like on the internet or just one-on-one or whatever, especially if I disagree with them, is like, what am I trying to accomplish? Like, am I trying to make this person feel like they're wrong and stupid? Or am I trying to get a point across and educate somebody on something? Because if it's the latter, then like taking that compassionate approach is like, it might, to your pride and your ego, sometimes it might feel like, I don't want to do that. And like the petty side of you is just like, no, fuck this person. But like, ultimately, if you're trying to like make a difference or educate people or spread a message of positivity and compassion, you have to be that too. You know what I mean? And I think that is the most important. I think that's the most important thing. And when it comes to like artists, and I don't think that you have to speak on something if you don't know anything about it. You know, like I feel like every time an artist dies or something, or like a person with influence dies, there is just a million people on the internet that are just, you know, again, their anger. Yeah, their anger is like misplaced. They're upset. They're angry. They feel powerless. So it gets like projected onto each other and they go back and forth. And it's like, what is this doing? How is this helping anybody? So I feel like artists, I think that more artists can like get a bit more educated on it. And also just remember that like, you don't have to speak on something that you don't know anything about or that you don't agree with. You know what I mean? Like you can keep your opinions to yourself, but like still be a part of like making a difference, you know, like saying something on Twitter. Yes, it can help if it comes from a genuine place, But if it's just for the sake of like getting validation or somebody being like, oh, you're so like morally, you're just this pillar of morality, that's not real, you know, that's not authentic. So it's like just creating noise, I feel. So I think that just kind of, yeah, I guess just more compassion all around and trying to just you know, remind yourself that, you know, you're still a fan at the end of the day, and we're still people, no matter how big your project gets. And, you know, we got to take care of each other.
I love that. You said it all. I really don't have anything else to fucking say. It's great. It's great. It makes my job really easy. No, I agree with everything. And it's also, yeah, it's like, you know, you see somebody pass, you see some crazy thing go down, and then everybody has their 2 cents and they want to create these discussions and these arguments and all this stuff. But it's usually from something that is always going on. And it's like in our topic of conversation today, this doesn't have an off switch and an on switch when we feel like it. Like it is always happening. And to just take little steps up the staircase of being aware, and then, you know, instilling like preventative action with it as much as you can in a realistic way, is going to amount in being like a part of the melting pot that's actually going to make a difference. And it's very cool to see all of the strives that End Overdose has been accomplishing, and like the achievements, and then like artists like yourself, Svdden, who like, thank you for sharing your personal story. But there's so many artists, fans, other people who can relate and like put themselves like in your shoes. And I think you sharing that story, just, it breaks down this fourth wall, because there is that very shitty artist complex that I think a lot of fans look upon and a lot of artists look upon. And it's just kind of like, well, damn, like, how did we all start? And we all started because we love music. And it's like, these are things that are a part of our community, whether you're a metalhead or you're a raver. And that's where I think End Overdose has really continued to break down these walls and these boundaries within genres, because it's something that happens everywhere, whether it's music or not. And it's very lovely to have you both on. I want to know, Mike, from you, if you kind of have anything else to share with us, and then like, if we want to donate, if we want to volunteer, if we want to learn more, like what are some upcoming festivals you're going to be at? Like, just download all the information on me.
Yeah, so a lot of information. You know, we're still partnered with Insomniac, so every Insomniac festival the rest of the year, you'll see us there. We'll have our booth. So if you're going to be there, come get trained. If you've already got our training and have like the little certification card, you can just walk up to our booth. We hand you Naloxone and send you on your way. But, you know, in terms of stuff coming up, we have these festivals. We're partnered with AEG as well, so we'll be at some AEG festivals soon. And, you know, in terms of what we're doing creatively, you know, we just had a collaboration with Wes from Limp Bizkit comes out this week. That's been a big entrance into, you know, a new genre that we were kind of touching on it earlier, but EDM versus alternative versus metal. And it's always exciting to break new ground into a new music community and see how they receive it. It's been an amazing, overwhelmingly positive reaction from their community. So the rest of this year, really, from my communications perspective, just trying to keep pushing and breaking new ground, breaking into new music scenes, while, of course, keeping EDM kind of central to what we do. But yeah, if you want to donate, you can go to endoverdose.net. We have a donation portal there. If you want to apply to volunteer, you can apply there. If it's before June 28th when this comes out, there's still time to apply to start your own chapter. So you can do that on our website as well. And really, if you want to support us, donations are the biggest way to do it. We're funded 90% by small personal donations. So it's really people throwing $5, $10 in that makes it possible for us to be at these festivals. But
you guys can also go to the link in my bio too. I have the End Overdose link in there as well, if you forget. So
yes. Yeah. But at the end of the day, just sharing our profile, sharing a collaboration we do we do something. We're actually filming with Sab soon again. So we'll have some new content. If you like that and see it, share it. You don't know who's going to see that, relate to it, or be interested and want to educate themselves. So sharing, spreading the message, that means the world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for sharing that with me. I feel like I learned so much. This is something that I definitely want to implement more. I'm not sure how exactly to, like taking the personal steps to share things, but I really want to do more with the podcast, like moving forward, because I think that would be, podcasts are just sick, and they're like a cool way of press where we can talk about this and like nothing's censored, and like it actually gives a transparent space for us to really be realistic and like give people transparent information on like how to be aware and how to help. And I feel like I could talk about this for hours, but I usually can only keep people for about 60 to 65 minutes. So I think that this is good and a great like intro to digesting what end overdose is, like how it exists in a multifacet of all of our communities, and like how to be involved, and how important it is to just be like aware and just take like one step of action. Like one little step that is realistic to you is better than turning your head and doing nothing, because it has hit every community. And it is something where, in like Sav and I's position, where we do have influence through the art that we create and the things that we do, it is super important for us to stay, feel responsible to make sure that like our fans and like the people that we love in this community and outside and in our family and kids we went to high school with are like safe and aware. And yeah, you never know who's going to see it. So I want to thank you guys both for coming on. This was absolutely lovely. And while it is a kind of, as you said, can be like a daunting subject, it's very, I think, just awesome that it has come this far, because it's like taken a lot, and it's taken a lot of things that debatably should have never had to happen for it to get here. But that's
how it goes.
Works. That's how it goes. Yep.
The rules have to get broken, and people have to get fucked up to be able to be like, okay, I should probably do something about this. Cause I know that's how it was like for me. I was like, so
no, it's so we're here and we're talking about it. And, again, down the line, we'll do like a Sav and Mike return to the podcast, and we'll talk about it more, because I'm sure it's just going to get better and more awareness and bigger communities from here on out. So thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm going to stop recording.
Thanks, Lizzie. I appreciate it.